Welcome back. You're still watching the Breakfast Show with Shimeen Adil and myself, Muhammad Abdurrahim. President Sisi inaugurated a number of state projects this past week, including a complex of 1,300 greenhouses on an area of 10,000 fidans in Marsa Matruh, parts of a nationwide agricultural project. The president also opened a factory in Marsa Matruh for packaging agricultural products, in addition to a complex for seed production. The area of each greenhouse is estimated at 3 to 12 fidans. The director of the National Services Projects Organization, the NSPO, Mustafa Amin, said at the inauguration ceremony that 65% of the Marsa Matruh project's total 10,000 square kilometers has been cultivated so far. The rest of the entire area is to be cultivated as per a planned land classification timeline. We have the pleasure of having with us here in our Nile TV International studios engineer Shokri Botrous, greenhouses cultivation expert, to talk to us about the issue. Engineer Botrous, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Shokri. First, let's tell our audience what is meant by greenhouses.
Greenhouses are just an environment controlled and protected, where we grow agricultural products. There's nothing new to that. The only difference is that we are able to control the growth of our plant and the different seasons. In outdoor cultivation, normally any plant, whether indoor or outdoor, has a few requirements. Climatic requirements: oxygen, water, light, and nutrients. In the outdoor cultivation, we depend on the normal conditions on which we have no control. In protected areas, like the greenhouses, we are able to control that. We control temperature, we control light, ventilation, heat, and we give the plant the nutrients it requires for a healthy growth. So we supply the optimum conditions for a plant to grow and produce, which we have no control over in outdoor cultivation. This is the only difference. A plant needs a medium to grow in, or just a structure for the roots to hold on to, which can be anything. I don't want to confuse soil and medium, because you can grow plants in a greenhouse without soil whatsoever. You can just put gravel. All it needs is the nutrients and water. And the recent trend of hydroponic cultivation, you just grow plants in water. And this is excellent. We'll come to that later. The benefits, if we want to move on to something else, the benefits of this project, or of a greenhouse, actually, it's very refreshing, because this mega project is long overdue. I'm very happy that the state is taking so much interest in establishing such a mega project. I don't know about the requirements of the market. I don't think that we have scarcity of vegetables. I mean, you can go down and buy vegetables whenever you like.
But we want to export, because I think that opening the door for exports, will be very important, especially at a time after the flotation of the Egyptian pound.
Exactly. We have this advantage. But then again, we have to go one step back. We cannot say we are going to plant 10,000 or establish 10,000 greenhouses for the local market, and the surplus will be exported. I have reservations about that. Exportation is a very specific field. I would rather say we have 10,000 greenhouses, 2,000 of which will be specific for export, because the export market has specifications. It has a whole network of logistics. We cannot say the surplus will be exported, because if we establish 7,000 greenhouses in Minya, and we have 1,000 greenhouses extra produce, Minya is far away from an airport, far away from a port. It may not have the handling capabilities. So if we're going to say
but there
export,
is high demand for Egyptian fruits and vegetables in
so
general.
we specialize. We say 20,000 of the 100,000 greenhouses that we are aspiring to establish, 20,000 of those, 15,000 of those will be in Alexandria, will be in Port Said, will be beside a port or an airport, and will be specific for export. I would like to differentiate between local and export product. This is about export. Establishing in different areas, I would also like to know what was the criteria applied. I mean, why in Marsa Matruh I can understand, in Ismailia, how were these locations chosen?
Yes, sir.
And on what principle? We have to take into consideration that it is not just a greenhouse. It is a whole network of things. It's a greenhouse. It has related projects beside it. You will have an agro industry. Most important is that you are creating a new urban community. If you have 10,000 greenhouses somewhere, 7,000 in Minya, can you imagine how many people are going to be working in the 10,000 or 7,000? This is a community in itself. This is a new urban community on a higher caliber than the normal urban communities we have. What's the sociology behind that? They have requirements. How are we going to deal with that? There's an agro-industry related. It's a whole network. On the other hand, there's something else that I would like to highlight. I've said it countless times. If we're going to establish one greenhouse that is going to produce the equivalent of 10 acres of open land, okay? One greenhouse will produce the equivalent of 10 acres in the open field. But they're going to produce the same thing. Vegetables here, vegetables there, right? There's no point in just flooding the market with vegetables. I would rather see a grand scheme of things. If one greenhouse will give me the product of 10 acres, then it is liberating these 10 acres from this product. Okay?
Right.
That we can use to grow wheat. A different story. Wheat can be grown from the Mediterranean all the way down to our southern borders with Sudan. The climatic conditions are ideal everywhere in the nation. There is no problem with that. But it has to be part of a strategy, an agricultural strategy. If we're going to make 1,000 greenhouses here, it's going to liberate 100,000 acres outside. They cannot produce the same product, or else you're just flooding the market. This would help me grow corn and wheat and help me in reducing our dependence on imported product. It has to be part of a scheme. It has to be part of an agricultural strategy. We say 100,000 greenhouses, we can't get ahead of ourselves and go overboard with it. It's a wonderful plan, a wonderful plan. And I was watching our president asking questions the other day. Very, very wise questions. He asked them specifically, after all the technical details and the logistics and the products and all that. He asked them, is this being digitalized? Something completely different. They didn't grasp the question at first. Yes, of course, we have figures and everything is computerized. He said, no. Is this whole thing digitalized in a brain somewhere? An excellent question. What he wanted to say is it part of a scheme. 1,000 greenhouses here, 10,000 over there, but how do they fit in the whole strategy of things?
Right.
They're not.
Sir, I just want to know if we can cultivate any kind of crops in these greenhouses, or just a specified crops only can be cultivated.
Theoretically, you can grow anything.
Yes.
But practically speaking, you grow. You don't want to grow open field crops. I mean, you're not going to grow wheat in a greenhouse.
No.
You don't want to do that.
Yes.
You want to intense. It's an intense agriculture. It's vertical. It's not horizontal.
Yes.
You get more products you're able to control the nutrients you're giving the plant, it gives more fruit. Fruit of any kind, not fruit, I mean just fruit. Vegetables, leafy products.
Yes.
You can, theoretically, you can grow anything. But practically, you have to choose what you want to grow.
Yes.
Okay. Engineer Botrous, can you tell us how do greenhouses go about saving on irrigation water consumption?
Absolutely. A rule of thumb, if you're cultivating a unit area of 1 acre, 4,200 square meters, and the equivalent in a greenhouse is about 100 meters or 400 meters. By sheer surface area, it's 1/10. That's one thing. The next thing is that you are using drip irrigation or mist irrigation, and this is very, very controlled. And the plant just requires a drop of water with its nutrients at periodic times. So, of course, you save on water immensely. I want to add that I would have liked to see in this inauguration some hydroponic greenhouses. Hydroponic greenhouses is plants that are grown in water. Just water. The roots are there in the water, maybe some gravel to hold on to, but no soil. In that case, the water circulation is closed. It's a closed circuit. The water goes to the plant with the nutrients added to it, goes somewhere else, gets reoxygenated, and comes back again. So the loss is zero. Zero.
Perfect.
So, sir, can you elaborate on the places where greenhouses can be cultivated? What is the criteria on which we choose these areas?
I really don't know the criteria that has been applied in the present circumstances, but you can establish a greenhouse anywhere.
Anywhere.
Of course, you do not want to use fertile soil for a greenhouse.
So as to liberate the fertile soil.
You might as well build a two-story building.
Yes. So
for
fertile
normal
soil.
fertile soil. You don't need that. You can go out to the desert, because the soil, if you're going to use soil, the soil that is being used is sterilized anyway, completely. So if you're using sand, you're sterilizing it before using it. And it is disinfected and sterilized periodically. The advantage of greenhouses as well is that you can have overlapping crops, overlapping supplies. You start, since the conditions are stable, you don't have seasons like you have outside, you can grow all year. So you can plant this row, or a number of rows, this month, another number of rows next month, and so on. So you have a steady supply of the product. In the open fields, you can't do that because you have seasons.
Yeah. Yes.
So you plant once and you harvest once.
There's a certain season for a certain
because
crop, X or Y
exactly.
crop. So I guess what
you have one harvest that goes on to the market at one time.
So I guess what can be done in greenhouses is that the overlapping you talked about, So we should, or you might recommend or ought to try to produce those crops that are not
available in
available,
different times of year. Which is what is done. Tomatoes, for instance, you have seasons where there's an abundance. At times we used to pay people to come and collect them because they had no price, and at times where the prices go crazy. But if you have a stable harvest, a continuous supply, you can build on that. You can build figures. You can project harvests. You can build agro-industry. You're not depending on climatic conditions. You are controlling your harvest. You're controlling your supply. You can calculate how much you're going to have at the end of your year production, give or take 5%, 10%. So you can build on that. You can build figures, you can build factories, a lot of related products.
Yes, sir, talking about agriculture in general in Egypt and challenges facing this vital sector.
The challenges facing agriculture is lack of know-how.
Lack of know-how.
The majority of farmers do not have the know-how. They have the experience in a particular crop or 2 or 3 crops that they have been growing from time immemorial. But they don't have the scientific know-how. This is the great advantage of these greenhouse things, is that it has raised the caliber of expertise. There is a scientific reason now for doing this. The people working there, okay, the supervisor are academics, PhDs, they're wonderful people with wonderful know-how, but they are educating a new generation of young people who may find it a little bit demeaning to hold a tool and work in his father's field because he is now an agricultural engineer or a diploma. You bring this generation into a completely new level of scientific know-how. And this is what this mega project is achieving, as well as products and flooding the market with wonderful things that we've been lacking. It's educating the farmer.
Yes.
Educating the farmer to give a better crop, raising his own standards, raising his own, increasing his own income, which in the end is what you want to achieve.
Improving their skills in
improving his skills and his know-how. The second, and I think that the state is tackling that properly, the second challenge is building on agricultural land. This is a disaster, and it should never have been neglected as it has been. Because if you encroach on, it's irreparable. It's irreparable.
Yes.
I don't know if it would be too much to ask Engineer Botrous, but would these types of projects, the greenhouses projects, help the economy in a sense that it would help control inflation? For instance, whenever we read inflation numbers, we see the significance of inflation or deflation when it comes to prices of fruits and vegetables. So I guess that with more and more supply of vegetables and fruits to the market, that would control prices more and would get prices down and would help fight inflation in food and beverages sector and maybe inflation at large. So is it too much to ask from this sector to be the leading player in helping the Egyptian economy overcome problems of inflation?
Absolutely. And I'm very glad that you used the word leading. We cannot completely rely on 100,000 greenhouses. And we do not want the private sector to be discouraged by such a mega project. There is definitely a room for you and I to make our own greenhouses. There's no problem. What causes inflation in a market? Supply and demand. If the demand is greater than the supply, then prices go up. If you have a stable supply, more or less with slight fluctuations, then the inflation, the fluctuation in prices will also be stable. But it has to be part of a political agricultural scheme. To give you an example, I've said that countless times, in Italy there is no more Ministry of Agriculture. There is the Ministry of Agricultural Politics. Le politiche agronomiche.
What is the difference?
You have to, the market changes, the requirement changes. It is definitely a changing world.
Yes.
Population increases, their requirements and their habits change. You have to have your finger on the pulse of the market. You have to have a strategy for what your citizens need, what the people need,
yes.
and the shifting in their moods. Maybe they're more into strawberries this year, and they're more into vegetables the next one. It can't be left loose. It doesn't mean that it has to be controlled by the state, but it has to be part of a plan. The state has to be aware. Like our president said, I was telling you a few minutes ago, is there a brain controlling all this? Is there a program? Is it part of a plan? It cannot be isolated islands. Greenhouses are somewhere. The normal fertile soil is somewhere else. Where do they overlap? What is this production going to do to that? We're going to have an acre of vegetables here and 100 greenhouses there producing the same thing. So where does this fit? And you have to have a network. I remember at one time, going back to the export thing, in a neighboring country I was visiting, particularly greenhouses for a certain reason. And I had an appointment with the owner, and I went there on time, and I found him driving a forklift. And he told me, I'm very sorry, give me 5 minutes. He finished and he came back and he said, because this box, or this number of boxes, have to go to the airport in 45 minutes to catch the plane at I don't know what time, an hour later, because it has to be in Paris at the Hal food market at 5 o'clock in the morning. You see, there is a network. It's not loose. I'm sure all this is being taken care of. We have a long experience in exportation, but 100,000 or 50,000 greenhouses have different logistics.
Right.
I'm sure that will be taken care of. We have wonderful people looking after.
Great.
So I'd like to thank you, Engineer Shokri Botrous, a greenhouses cultivation expert. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very
much.
much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, please stay with us. We'll be back shortly, Shireen and I, and talk about the life of ancient Egyptian queen Cleopatra. Please stay.